How do we look, Charlie? Professional?
Don't lie.
You look like a couple of draftsmen.
Oh, wow. That's quite a compliment, I think. Welcome to another Draftsmen podcast.
Thank you.
What do you want to talk about today?
Oh, God.
Straight to business.
Yeah. There's
right to religion.
There's no intro in this one. We're going to talk about the state of the union.
You mean like politicians? No. So we're going to talk about like the cutting edge of arts? How when arts are the
state of the art. Yeah, the stuff that you do. No, we're going to talk about what is the current state of the art industry and the art world and what we're seeing going on with students and schools.
You sure you want to talk about this?
I don't, but I feel like we should. Do you want to talk about this?
Well,
we can cut it here.
It's the Draftsmen Show.
Yeah. In 2009, at the Animation Expo, I was with a group of beginning students. They were freshmen, and they were so worried because they knew that layoffs had happened like crazy in the animation industry.
2009?
2009, I think it was.
Yeah.
And not only had layoffs happened like crazy, but the economy was in terrible trouble. And I remember one of them, bright-eyed, who's had a good career, but at that age, 18 years old, was, how are we ever going to have a career when all these professionals are laid off?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm old, and I've observed
how try on this one.
I've observed how it always goes in this way and then the other way. And you know, when the pandemic happened, by the way, those students, a number of them have had good careers. When the pandemic happened, all of a sudden film production, people are doing live action stuff, just shut down. They're not working. But animators had more work than ever. And so many of my students who went into animation, when I would catch up with them, they were having to turn down jobs because they needed people to work in this industry. Then in this last year, it's just gone the other way. So the thing that I had to offer the students in 2009, which is that it goes back and forth, is very difficult to say now, because we may be at the beginning or in a revolution that's going to be more or less permanent. That is the concern about talking about this. You said something to me about the gallery world.
So that's about when I was getting into the gallery world, right? I started Watts at 2002. And then about, 6, 7, 8 years into it, I was pretty much ready to start applying to galleries and trying to sell my stuff. And that's when the economy tanked. And so I was entering the space when it was collapsing. Nobody was buying art, maybe only at the top, right? Like as in like major investments and stuff, or, trading playing cards or something, but not like new art from unknown artists. That was just not a thing. And so everybody I knew was kind of scrambling, like, what are we going to do? Art is just not moving. And that's also when the internet was starting to come around. And so a few years into that, people were like, oh, galleries are going to be replaced by the internet. And it kind of did. Galleries didn't go away. They're still around, right? But what happened was that this is now an additional way to sell art, is the internet. Promote yourself instead of partnering with the gallery. But is the thing you're asking me about is what I said, that galleries never truly came back to what they were?
Did they bounce back?
As far as I know, I don't think so. Maybe? Do you think they did?
I don't follow it.
I don't think they did. I mean, maybe some forms of art, maybe, yes. But I don't think that California plein air galleries or the Western art, like cowboy stuff, this is like the biggest galleries in the country, in the United States, were like these Southwest type of galleries. And I'm not talking about like the New York stuff, that New York, Europe, where it's like modern art. That obviously they're probably selling way higher priced items, but I don't think that's our audience.
Well, I do have one student who is making a lot of money, and he's in the upper echelons, and I won't mention his name at this point, but people will know about it later because he's been on this for a year and a half or so, and it's a European and Middle Eastern and New York thing. So yeah, there are some, but we're talking about less than 1% of the people that I have observed going into the gallery world. So where does that leave us? Because if I'm not following the gallery world, you're not either.
Well, I mean, I'm not following, but I do know artists that were in the gallery space and they don't rely on it as much. Mm-hmm. So that must mean that like it's not doing that great, right? Otherwise, they would have jumped back in.
So we going to have any good news?
Well, the good news is that like sure things shifted, but it's not like art died. It's not like artists didn't have careers throughout this since 2009. It's just that there was a shift. Things changed and people adapted. And I think this is a constant thing that happens. It's like the young people who are going through this right now, I totally understand how it feels because it feels like it's all happening to them and they're unlucky. But this happens to like everybody. These shifts happen, every 20 years or something. I don't know. It depends on the industries, but everybody goes through these shifts and you just have to adapt. There is light at the end of the tunnel. If you're resourceful, if you can keep pushing through, trying hard, have a positive attitude, don't give up, all those lame things.
Those sound a little cliche. Yeah.
Yeah, all those cliches. Yeah, that's kind of it though. A lot of people are mad because they get mad because like, society tells them you go to college, you do this thing, and then you're going to be given a job and everything will be okay. And then it doesn't work out that way. And it's like, well, no, people might have promised you that, but they shouldn't have. You really just have to figure things out, especially if you're trying to be an artist. Like whoever promised you anything in this space should not have promised you anything. It's going to be a rough battle no matter what. It's very competitive and it's really hard to do. And even when you make it, it's still like low pay.
Oh, not necessarily.
It's still bad news. God damn it. Charlie, say something positive.
We're all gonna die.
Oh, God.
The issue that we're trying to address here is that there have been times when you can say, it's going to change, it's going to change. And there are times when you can't say that it's necessarily going to change for the better because you don't know. The Depression lasted for over a decade. And there were people who were saying prosperity is just around the corner. Actually, there was a song, just around the corner, there's a rainbow in the sky. Okay. So let's have another cup of coffee and let's have another piece of pie. Okay. There was an answer song to it that said,
okay,
prosperity is just around the corner. And you would hear a guy say, did you say corner or coroner? And the whole thing was to shatter this, hey, everybody, it's going to get better, because it didn't get better until this country got into a war and there was all the stuff that happened in Europe. So right now I am observing that a lot of young people and even not young people, middle-aged people, are looking at the situation and saying, what do you do? It is a temptation to despair. It's very difficult. And what I don't want to do is say, yeah, it's all going to be good. It's all going to be good, because I'm not sure that that's the case. So taking up a subject that's this sobering is that if you're trying to make your living as an artist, how do you do it now? We've dealt with it before, but we dealt with it in a previous year and a previous
I think that's
years.
The wrong question. I don't think how do you do it now?
Change the question.
Yeah, how do you do it now is going to be, there's like 1,000 answers to that.
Okay.
Because like, what are you doing? What do you want to do? Where do you live? What's your industry? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? There's so many things that decide how do you do it now, that there is no, I don't think there is one answer, and there has never been one answer.
Okay.
Like, was there a formula for the way I did it?
Yeah, it's what you mentioned earlier that sounded like cliches.
What?
All those keep a positive attitude, yeah.
Right, okay. But was there a formula? Did I follow some formula for how artists are supposed to make a living?
What did you do? Well, how from your
I just
perspective,
tried stuff out and I learned and
you figured stuff out.
Yeah, you have to learn to navigate the world you're in.
And sometimes the world you're in is a really rough world.
You said you're in.
Pardon?
What? Nothing. This is stupid. Just keep going.
The world you're in.
Oh, can you check under there?
Under which part? What are you?
Yo,
Well played.
Under which item?
Underwear. Under which item?
No good.
Okay, what? Why did you say you're in?
The world you
Are in. Got it.
I'm glad you can make light.
Yeah, this is the only way I can make this episode enjoyable. I'm sorry.
You have to die anyways. You might as well make jokes about it.
Okay.
How will this discussion be different than in the last few years, where we've discussed this over and over about what you're going to do as an artist? You're going in. What was our mission statement for this?
Changed?
Was for people who love drawing and painting, picture making, and particularly for those who are hoping for it to be their living, their livelihood, their profession.
That's interesting. Well, the first part hasn't changed at all, and I don't think it ever will. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to learn the visual language because you love it, what could ever change that? Mm-hmm. As far as making a living of it, I have no idea, and I don't want to pretend that I do. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying, is that like it's going to be different for every person based on where they are, who they are. Jesus Christ,
You need to turn off.
I need to turn off this vibrator. The vibrate feature
on your phone.
On my phone.
Let's make sure every caveat.
The people watching saw the phone in my hand.
Yeah, they
but the people listening have no context. I have to remember there's people listening.
That's right. Your mind is broader than mine. God. I hadn't thought of that. So a person who's tuned into this right now might feel like, I need insight, and this is the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to die. I think people are... this is my personal read on the situation, is that I think that it's somewhere in between the ones that think it's going to be... everything is great and amazing and it's going to be better, and some people that think that robots are going to do every art job. That's just too far. I don't think that's going to happen. There will definitely be like some layoffs in companies and people are going to be affected dramatically, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as like, what's the point? Why would we ever do art again?
I don't feel that
human
either.
will do art ever again. Like, I don't think it's going to be that way.
So is that the one thing that we start this with? Because we are not going into this with a step-by-step plan for this discussion. But the one thing we cling to is what you've claimed. It's a big, obvious claim. The arts aren't going to disappear. Making art isn't going to disappear.
So I'm going into this assuming that I'm correct in that. Because if I'm wrong and robots are going to take over and we have no art job, then I don't know what else I have to say.
Okay.
So... and I don't believe that, so I don't see a point of talking about that.
Well, with that one clump in the middle of the Teflon,
if there is an art industry in the future, then I don't think anything has changed. Mm-hmm. That's my point, is that the people going through it for the very first time, to them it seems like the end of the world. It seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be impossible. No one's ever gone through this before. And so this time is different. For those that have gone through it, they're not scared. Are you experiencing the same thing as I am, where online it's all negative, mostly pessimistic? I guess that's the same thing. Everybody's like super afraid. But like in my physical interactions with people that I know, I don't see any of that. People are not scared. People see it and they're just like, yeah, it is what it is. But I've done this before, and I'm just gonna adapt, and I'll keep going, and we'll see what happens. It's much less important in all of my real world interactions. Are you experiencing that, or
no? I'm not experiencing.
You're not. Okay, so what are you experiencing?
What you're saying smacks of some of the Queen saying, "Let them eat cake." Is that you're not affected by this?
No, I'm talking about people
and the people around you are not affected by this as much. But when the Depression happened, when the stock market fell in October of 1929, it plummeted. It people were in the cities were casting themselves off buildings, we're told. In the Midwest, the Depression didn't affect people for the first year and the next year. In fact, the crops were doing well, and it's like, well, we're not affected by the Depression until the Dust Bowl, until things started. And by the middle of the 1930s, it was not affecting everybody. Movie stars were still making good movies. There were always people who had been lucky enough or insulated enough. Mm-hmm. But I make it a point 2 or 3 times a week to talk with former students who have been professionals, and some of their trajectories, some of them who are in their 40s and 50s now, that were my students when I was first starting, it is heartbreaking, and there's not much I can do about it.
What is heartbreaking? Can you tell me what?
The thing that is heartbreaking is that they have not had, in this documentary called Crips and Bloods, Made in America, that Stacy Peralta did, one of the people he interviewed pointed out that this happened in the 1940s or 50s, when the plant shut down, or when the place where everybody was employed shut down. He said, when you have a career, you can move from one thing to another. When you have a job that you've been on for however many years, it's your whole livelihood, and that's taken away. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And yes, you can say in retrospect that you worked for that company for 15 years and you did a lot of work for them and they made a lot of money with having their employees doing, and now what are you left with? Well, they're going bankrupt or they're laying everybody off, and it's so yeah, there is, I don't think I'm very exposed to it. I am insulated, but I'm not insulated by way of my relationships with a span of generations, including the new ones, including the young ones, and to see how they're scared. I have a positive thing, but I'm going to save it, because I think that it's easy when your crops are doing better than ever in 1931 and 32 or whenever it was that they were having a boom, to say it's not that big a deal until it hits.
Yeah. I don't know how to read this one though. So like, I would expect that if young students, and I think most of our students are in their 20s. Like that's
current students in their 20s. Yeah.
I'm talking about the website program.
Gen Zers, right?
If most of them thought, "What's the point? This is not going to be a career path for people in the near future," then art course sales would drop. Right? I mean, am I right in assuming that?
Let's assume so. I don't think so, but I'll challenge it later.
But I haven't felt it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're seeing very good numbers and a very good interest in people learning art. I don't know if that's going to start soon. Like
it may or may not start at all. How many people make their living with crafts and scrapbooking? And yet,
I don't know. Are you saying a lot or not?
No,
not a lot?
I'm doubting that there's many people. My living is I do scrapbooks.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the market grows at times out of just the love and interest of
hobbyists.
Hobbyists, yeah.
Okay.
That is something we've dealt with before. This is one alternative, is to do it for the love of it. The word amateur is not a bad word. Some of the greatest artists of history did their best work as amateurs. That's one direction to look toward. That was your goal. So you told me that was your goal at one point.
Yeah, it is still.
Elaborate.
Where I started Proco, and my goal is to have it be mostly automated to the point where I can focus on drawing and painting for myself without having to make money off of producing art. Because I did try before I started Proco to make a living off of selling art, and I was making money. Even though the gallery scene was complete shit back then, like I was just talking about, I was still making money, but I didn't enjoy it because I wasn't creating for me. I was creating to sell. Your
motive was to make.
Yeah, it was just the wrong mindset. I don't want to try to sell a painting. I want to create, and then actually don't even put any effort into trying to sell. I could just put it off to the side or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I like the process of painting too much to have it be tampered with like that.
Okay.
You know, it just ruins it for me. I just don't want to paint anymore, which really hurts me. It's like, I don't want to paint anymore. What the hell? It's like such a big part of me that when that happens, I'm like, no, whatever's causing that, you go away. Okay. And so I was like, okay, for money, I'd rather do this other thing. And then let's get to the point. So that, anyway, yeah, that
your career, your money and your career have been primarily as a business owner.
Yeah. As a teacher.
A business owner who teaches and makes art.
Yeah.
That's it. So that you might not be the only example that a person would want to look at, because some people aren't inclined to be business owners. Some people that's just not where they go.
And I think that could be bad.
Explain.
Like, I think that every artist needs to think of themselves as a brand.
Yeah.
And a very, very small business. Your reputation, your portfolio, your website, your social media marketing. I mean, even if you're not trying to sell stuff online, you don't need a big following, but having a presence online definitely helps you in getting a job.
Every artist is a business owner.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a very small business, but if you could think of yourself as a business and a brand, I think you are at an advantage at least. So you don't need to. You could still make it and have a good job, and people will hire you if you have no online presence at all. But I think it gives you an advantage.
You mentioned the word reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And so one question would be reputation among whom?
Depends on the job, yeah.
Well, there's two things. One is reputation among your public. But then there's the person, I have no public. Okay, there's another place that we can look. One was
peers?
So among your peers, because some people are not business owner types. They are not idea people. They are not entrepreneurs. But if they have a reputation among someone who is, that I'm starting my own business, I'm doing my own thing, I've got these ideas, I can't do them alone. You are so reliable. You are so enjoyable to work with. I've got people in my life like that right now. I'm looking to work with them for the rest of my life because they make everything better and easier. So it's your reputation among those with whom you may be a team member. There's another thing. Do it as an amateur. Do it as a part of an entrepreneurship, a brand where you're not the brand. You are one supporter, one key player in that brand.
One other thing is that I think when the internet and YouTube started growing, it gave artists the opportunity to kind of make it on their own, right? It became a lot easier to not need a company.
Yes.
You can make your own animated short and make money off of it and get it crowdfunded and all that stuff, all those tools that are available.
Mm-hmm.
But still, most artists work for a company and work on the big movies and the big animated films and the video games and all that stuff. I think that trajectory is going to keep going in that direction where, maybe companies, because of AI, they're going to start cutting down on the team size because AI might do some stuff. But I think there will also be a trend where those companies are going to see a lot more competition from much smaller teams of people doing their own thing. And so it'll be a lot easier if you aren't with a company to do your own thing and actually compete and make money, I think.
Yeah, no, you've mentioned AI.
Yeah.
And in mentioning AI, that's one of the main things that's causing the fear, because it's not just that, Jeffrey Katzenberg made a statement to the media this past year that 90% of animation will be done by AI. And it's not that it will be done, it's that already AI and other factors, it's not only AI, are putting artists out of employment. So I think what we should do here is start to name the threats. One is that the movie studios and the TV studios have overshot their market. That started to happen a few years ago, where you're streaming, you got so much content that it's now being distributed. It happened with the comic book industry in the early 90s. In the early, nobody could make a living in comics. You'd get paid $35 per page for the whole. I think you had to do more than one thing. I think you had to pencil. I can't remember, but it was like $35 a page that you could make. How can you make your living? So the people who were doing comics were people who were living with their parents. And then it was some of those people that turned the industry around about 1991, and it went ballistic, and you could become a millionaire making comics. And they were becoming millionaires, and they were in their 20s. And so then everybody, I remember a guy saying to me, you need to get into comics. That's where the money is. And I was well into my 30s by that time. So many comics were being produced that it saturated the market. And I was close to people who were making good livings in comics, and then they were doing 16-hour days and couldn't pay their rent because nobody's going to buy that many comics. So that has happened. Studios are closing. Studios are going bankrupt. Studios are laying off.
So the studio's closing and going bankrupt is like a completely different issue, though, right? That's not AI causing that.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that you've got AI on one side.
Yeah.
You got the other side, which is that the industry is in a slump because of people who overshot.
Right, okay.
What else would we add on to here? The economy, everybody says the economy is doing good or the economy is doing terrible. It depends on who you listen to and which side of a political argument they're on.
Well, either way, the economy is a cycle.
What other things are in the way?
We should expect, if not now, in the near future at some point, for there to be a recession. Mm-hmm. We're not going to avoid a recession for the next 100 years, right? Like, that's not.
I don't know why not. But
what do you mean?
I do know why not. I know why.
Because of human nature?
Because I took a class that explained how the cycles happen. But I also felt like, aren't there small communities? Aren't there people like the Amish and the Dutch and some others who say, let's take the long range and make it just grow in increments so it doesn't have to have its periodic collapse or
that doesn't seem like human nature to me.
Well, it's a topic for another time.
Okay.
But let's assume it can't be. Just to say it's got to go in cycles. It's just natural.
Okay,
right.
Sure.
You get tired in the middle of the day. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. You get a slump.
There will be undulation of some kind.
Yeah.
All right. Assuming that gives a little hope. I'm just trying to get my head around the things to address because AI is a different thing than companies in charge who say, we're going to make this movie, we're going to make this movie, we're going to spend this much money, and then they collapse or go bankrupt or have to lay off everybody, and then all the suffering gets passed down to the people on the bottom. What other things are the threat to a person who says, I want to be a professional artist?
Themselves. It's probably the biggest threat.
Okay, and we've addressed that one.
We've already talked about that.
The industry sucks right now. The industry with a capital I.
And that's not the same as the economy, right?
That's not the economy. That is the industry of entertainment art and professional art production, and that even includes games games. And even though Pixar has just had this huge hit, it's the biggest hit they've ever had, and yet
is that adjusted for inflation?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Yeah. And
it's probably close either way, but yeah. Anyway, that point still stands.
And yet, many of the people who worked on that movie
and Minions did really well as well.
Pardon?
Minions, Despicable Me.
Has done very.
That did very well.
Those things are good, but it does not mean. I mean, the people who worked on some of those movies that got laid off, they don't get their jobs back because of that.
Yeah,
that's the industry. The economy goes in cycles. I'm sorry.
But the industry goes in cycles, and not even cycles. Sorry, the industry is always moving. That's the thing.
It's always moving.
It's always moving. Don't expect 5 years from now for the industry to be like how it is today.
Okay.
Expect change always.
Yes. Well, in case I've drained dry this business of what the problem is.
Yeah.
The solution of just wait around, the industry will get better.
Schools are closing down.
Schools. Did you see James Gurney's very respectful but honest?
Which one? No.
He did a blog post about a famous school closing down maybe 2 weeks ago.
I missed that one. Why are art schools closing down? July 15th. Yeah, this is just I wish I read. Wait, this is a one paragraph blog post?
Maybe that's what it was, but it was an homage. I think it was an homage.
American Academy of Art College in Chicago has announced that it will close its doors permanently. Yeah, I've heard of the Chicago Art Academy. It was founded in 1923 with a curriculum that emphasized painting and drawing and painting from live models. Graduates include some legendary illustrators and easel painters: Thomas Blackshear, Alex Ross, Richard Schmidt, Howard Terpening, Gil Elfgren, and Hayden Sundblom. I can never say his name. He's the guy that did the Santa, right? He designed Santa?
I think so, but I don't know.
Okay, the closure of American Academy in Chicago follows the closing of UArts in Philadelphia and the art institutes all across the country. Why are some art schools closing? Oh, read more on Substack. Shit,
That's why it was more than a paragraph.
Okay, it's more than a paragraph. There's a whole Substack on this. Okay, well, anyway, yeah. This is a much longer article. Okay, well, shit, I'm gonna read this after we're done here, I guess. Do you remember the main points from here?
Well, I remember one thing.
Okay.
James Gurney is honest. He doesn't say, it's all going to be great, and art schools are doing their job, and they'll come back. He's also respectful. He's aware that people that are at these art schools and that they're affected by it and are going to read this. And he's also pointing to something that art schools closing down affects the people at the bottom at least as much as it does.
Who are the people at the bottom?
People that are doing the teaching. Mm-hmm. The people who are doing the work there. They're the least paid anyway.
Yeah.
And art schools have bad reputations for a number of reasons that we've touched on in our 8 episodes on how to be your own art school.
Right.
There's another thing, is that where art education is changing. Because what's the point of going into debt to do something that your parents say you're never going to make? Art degree can buy you a cup of coffee.
I don't know. Sure. Okay. Why are we having more sales now online than before? Like, if you were right that there's just less students going into art, then we wouldn't be experiencing this right. Online. I don't think that describes the situation.
But they aren't going into debt.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. That's a big point right there. I think the main problem was that art schools became way too expensive,
and the teachers didn't get the money.
Yeah. Where was it going? Just real estate?
No, it's going to administrators and people who are owners of the school, and even if it's a not-for-profit school, it still happens. Yeah. That way, that you could tell at one art college, you could tell there would be a line of Teslas and Mercedes and BMWs, and then there'd be all the cars that can't be maintained, and it was just the difference between the administrators and the teachers.
Yeah,
everybody noticed
that's just a bad business owner.
Yeah,
I mean, because now they also don't have a business. Now they're also not making money.
Yeah,
their thing shut down because they were greedy. That can't be the only thing, right? Because that was always the case. Why is it now?
Well, here's another thing that you mentioned about why your sales are up and our schools are collapsing. One is you don't create debt.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second thing is that when you are in an art school, you are at the mercy of the administrator's choices. There may be really good teachers. The administrators don't like that teacher. They schedule them on a time that they know that they can't be available. So there's all sorts of weird things that go on where you end up with teachers that if somebody asks you, what'd you learn on that class? And they can't ever tell you what they learned. So you're beholden to someone else's choices for where your money is going to go for your time. Whereas when a person chooses to be educated online from various schools and various teachers, they can say, I don't need perspective. And I don't need to spend the money on Marshall's course. They are empowered rather than having somebody else take the power of their education. That's another reason.
That the students are empowered?
The students make the choices about what they're going to study.
Yeah. So they want the power, so they don't go...
Everybody wants to feel like they've got agency in this.
I don't know.
Well, no, you're right. That's right.
A lot of people want someone else to give them the structure.
That's right. That was one of the reasons why people would go to art schools. I don't know what to do, and I need somebody to tell me. And we've covered that. We did a podcast on what are the fundamentals, and then that guy who did that list of all the stuff that you should study. You've got access to that.
Okay.
So we're trying to get our head around the problem.
Yo, we're trying to figure this out on the spot.
Before we go to something positive, we should take the worst case scenario.
Worst case?
The worst case scenario for people who want to go into the arts and make a living.
They die.
Okay, this is an aside, but it relates.
No, worse than dying is if the robots make you do things you don't want to do.
The robots make you immortal and make you suffer through an eternal...
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going beyond death to damnation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say this. It's over. You don't make a living in the arts anymore.
Okay.
Okay, that would be the worst case scenario, right? Not pushing it further.
I get it. The worst case that you've presented. Got it.
My son recommended a book to me by Atul Gawande, who is a very good writer, called Being Mortal.
Okay.
It is written by a surgeon whose job has been dealing with death constantly. And right from the beginning of the book, his first assertion, as I recall it, I've read it once, I'm going to read it again, is you're going to die. So let's get that out of the way first. There is a great deal of pretending like you're not going to die. Oh, this medicine effect. What if you do this? Well, maybe you'll heal. Oh, well, I hope you'll get better. There comes a point where that isn't the case. Everybody's going to die. So it's a physiological fact, but he also points out that it is an emotional fact, and it is a sociological fact because people died all through history differently than they do now. People died in their homes. People died...
This isn't making me feel any better.
Hang on, but I'm painting the worst case scenario. Now people die in hospitals. It is a financial effect. The amount of the economy that goes to trying to rescue hopeless cases. He paints this picture vividly through the book.
Okay.
And then toward the end, he starts to shift gears of we can do better. He never deals with afterlife. He never deals, I don't even know that he has any belief in the afterlife. But his point is, the way we die can be done better for all parties involved. The way it used to be in the family was not all good, and the way it is now in the hospitals is just terrible. So he starts to paint a better picture. Now, you would think, and some people have mentioned this, because I wanted to talk about it I tell young people, you don't need to read this book, you're too young. And one of them said, I'm kind of interested in that book. But my feeling early on and by the end of it was not a feeling of depression or despair. Frankly, there was a bit of exhilaration in it, is that everybody's got to do this. C.S. Lewis said, the thing must be done, and therefore it can. But there was a sense of, as frightening as it is and as terrible as it can be, this is something everybody's got to do, so let's take that attitude and see how we can do it. Now, here's the reason I'm saying it.
Okay.
Is because a lot of people say, I'm not going to read a book about the fact that I'm going to die. It'll depress me. I did not have that response to the book. I had a very different response. I thought, I want to read this again slowly and talk about it with the people I'm around. Okay. Now let's shift back to something smaller than our life. Am I depressing you?
Okay, great. You had that feeling that I want to cut myself a little deeper and slower next time. So I don't understand why you reacted that way.
A sense of responsibility was one thing.
Responsibility
because when you die, the people around you are affected by it.
Yeah.
They're affected in a number of different ways. So there's one thing.
Okay.
Let's face it as if it's real. Mm-hmm. And how is it being prepared for? That's why I want to go through it slowly. Is that this is not going to be something I'm going to read in a matter of 3 weeks. It's going to be something I'm going to read and then have conversations with people in life. So that was one thing, and maybe that's the thing to focus in on, is responsibility.
Yeah. Okay.
Is what if you're not going to make a living as an artist?
So
ever?
What if worst case scenario? Now what?
Your career as an artist is now dead. We're saying this is the worst case scenario.
Okay.
You can't make a living as an artist.
Okay.
Does that mean your life is over? Does that mean that you aren't thinking about how you can enable yourself to create good art and empower yourself to do it with another source of income? Or even like Remedios Varo is my favorite of the surrealist painters. She wasn't even known. She was, I think she was in Mexico or South America for a good deal of her career. And people have given her flack because she had someone supporting her. She didn't have to sell it, but she made a strategic decision. I can do my best work with the support of another person. If we don't look to it as making a living, say that's the new normal. The new normal is, how will I empower myself to do my best backyard without having to sell everything, sell the stuff I've got in my garden. I'm going to make a good backyard for me. I'm going to be great at crafts. I'm going to do the family's best scrapbooks ever. And some of them might be so good that they do get reproduced. But that may be, we're taking worst case scenario here and saying, is there a side to that that can actually feel liberating?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure about liberating. The thing that comes to mind to me right now is that there's maybe some people who get too complacent, too comfortable with how it is now or how it was. And those people are actually at a disadvantage over the ones that have that had it rough and who are fighting to succeed and get a good education, who will already have had those habits and will continue to do that. It'll be easier for them to make it in this new world that if it's the worst case scenario. For example, there's some students at Watts when I was teaching there. I think Eric told me about this, so that the ones that found it really easy in the beginning, either through some natural talent or they grew up with parents who are artists and so they kind of had a head start and it was easy for them. And then they get into the real world or they go into college and they have to do work and it becomes more difficult. There's a bigger challenge than they've experienced so far. They have a tendency to quit much earlier than the people that didn't have it come to naturally to them or easy. The ones that have been fighting for it for a long time just keep going. I don't know why that.
How does that relate to? How does that relate to this thing of how difficult it is right now? Is it saying that this could prepare you for something?
I just think that look at where you are. If you're very comfortable, you might need to start preparing for a difficult time. No matter what, if you're too comfortable, you should probably just learn how to be less comfortable. I think that's just a good thing in every part of your life. I may be going on tangents here, but in my mind, for some reason, this makes sense.
I'm listening.
Like, I go into ice baths, not just because it lowers inflammation, but I think it makes me mentally stronger as well. It makes me be able to withstand physical pain a lot better. And so if I get too comfortable in my San Diego life, these ice baths are just like a punch in the face. Like, remember, you're a human, man.
It's reminding you of your mortality. It's reminding of you of your vulnerability.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of that intended discomfort and planned pain, controlled pain, I think can be good.
It's what exercise is, isn't
it? Yeah, exactly. Not to the point where it breaks you. You've said this. Don't drop the boulder on your head, right? Is that how you said it?
Lifting weights is good.
Yeah, lifting weights is good.
Lifting a 300-pound boulder over your head is not good.
Yeah, exactly. Ice bath at 37 degrees is good.
Wow.
But ice bath
sleeping
in
a
liquid nitrogen is not good.
This is an aside. Do you know who Andrew Huberman is?
Yeah.
Do you like him?
For some stuff. I got, with all of the celebrity health doctors, you got to make sure.
He's but he's a responsible celebrity health doctor. I mean,
I've heard some complaints, but I haven't experienced that. I think every time I listen to him, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. It seems like he knows what he's talking about. But again, don't get too comfortable. Do your own, if you listen to him and you're like, yes, that's what I need, go and look it up as well. Yeah. Don't just adopt that into your lifestyle without going to a second source. That's my only.
Okay, well, my observation.
It seems like he's
I've only watched about 7 or 8 because some students were excited about him. Yeah. Our lives got better, I think, in a matter of 6 months just from listening to some of those. He is so non-dogmatic. He says over and over through those podcasts, this does not mean that, and you cannot just buy that, and you cannot.
Yeah.
He is so aware of the complexity of what he's dealing with. He almost always qualifies for that, but it's like,
And he would probably agree with what I just said, that don't just trust me, go also do additional research on your own.
He says that over, he's characterized by that 5. Now, the reason I mention is because he talked about ice baths, he talked about cold therapy, which I did not listen to that one because I'm not doing cold therapy right now, except that I have learned, always take the last part of your shower to be the cold part of the water. I have learned that.
Well, he mentions ice baths as a way for mental strength, as a way to develop mental strength.
I see.
Yes, it is definitely you definitely learn how to get over that wall of anything that you just dread.
Wow.
Like, oh man, tomorrow I got to do this thing. And you just have that feeling in your pit of your gut, you know, and you just do not want tomorrow to come. That is what ice baths are. Like, Marshall, do you want to go right now?
No.
You want to dip yourself in 37 degrees?
You got one here?
Just 5 minutes from here?
No, I don't want to go right now.
I know you don't.
Yeah, but I might.
No one does.
I would do it before a podcast.
You would?
Yeah, I would do it before a podcast.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
Field trip.
We've got to have the option to cancel the podcast in case it gives me a heart attack or something.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You're kind of old.
Yeah.
We would need someone there.
Now that you mention
It's not recommended for...
Yeah. For over a certain age?
Well, yeah, I think so. But do you ever go into cold lakes?
We used to have a cold plunge. I took a shower underneath a waterfall.
It's not ice.
In the morning.
A waterfall? Okay, where?
Yeah, at the beach.
In Hawaii.
No, it was not in Hawaii. And it was the coldest I'd ever experienced. But we used to have a cold plunge at the gym I used to go to. And
those are probably like in the 50s, I think.
Yeah,
if it's a public gym, I don't think it's in the 30s.
It was very cold, but we loved it. But we stopped going. I've just learned never to go in public water. It's too dangerous. You're going into an environment where you don't know anything about this water. So I don't do that. I don't go to jacuzzis anymore in the public or anything. Oh. But here is what I did instinctively do. When I was public speaking, and it's so nervous in front of an audience, so uncomfortable.
It's all in your head, though.
I would take a shower beforehand, and then I'd make sure it was the coldest it could be, and I'd put my face up into it and imagine standing in front of the audience.
You punish yourself for the fear?
I'd imagine standing in front of the audience and say, can I breathe a full breath in and a full breath out while I've got this coldest water on me? And it made a difference. I could tell it made a difference. You are facing literal cold, which can be analogous to emotional cold, and saying, I can still breathe.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting to know.
Yeah, no, it's just practice doing things you don't want to do, that you really don't want to do. Because when you do it, your body goes into shock every time and your body thinks it's dying. It is not comfortable. But yeah, it's practice for those things you don't want to do. Like if you have a fear of, going and talking to girls or something, some cold plunges might make it easier. I don't know. I don't know.
Or take away the desire.
Take away the desire.
I can imagine.
I don't think so.
I can imagine.
Afterwards, it is like
for a few minutes.
It feels so good afterwards.
Yeah, it is. It's very enlivening.
It is.
I can imagine people putting in the comments that, I came here to find out about what's happening with my career, and they're talking about cold plunges.
Just dip yourself in cold. You'll feel better. You'll be numb to everything.
Yeah. Just a little Windex on that will fix everything.
No, I'm just saying mental strength is going to help to get through difficult times, and it might be difficult times. It might not. Maybe we're all overreacting and this is going to be great. Who knows? But it'll probably be difficult. It'll definitely be difficult for some. But I'm just throwing one thing out there that, like, if you're really comfortable in your life, I don't think it would hurt to implement some things that will get you used to some dealing with difficult situations in a controlled way, like a cold plunge. You're not like throwing yourself into something that will kill you. You're just building your mental strength. It's like going to the gym, but for your brain. I think that's a very important thing to have, is to be ready for life, both physically and mentally.
It makes sense. There's an analogy between what you do physically. Somebody said, if you can lose weight, you can do anything. You can.
Yeah, that's true. That's really hard.
It's because it's so intimate. This is food and my body and that relationship. It is so hard that if you can do it, it can empower you. That's why when people lose weight, they start to take more risks on other things and do things they would never have done before, because now they know they've got that. But yeah, to face a cold plunge and to face unemployment may have an analogy. Now,
did that come back and relate to what you said, or did I just go on a completely different trajectory? You brought up the book.
No. Oh, yeah, about dying. Suppose your career is dying. Suppose it's never going to come back to life. What will you do, and can you feel good about it?
Right.
That is one option.
And I think yes, but you have to have the mental strength to do that.
Yeah.
To feel good about it and have that feeling of responsibility and actually tackle it. Sometimes we can overreact to the point where we actually start acting the opposite of what is beneficial for us in the given situation.
Like escalating a fight.
Yeah.
Like freezing when you should fly.
Yeah, or if something dangerous is happening and you faint and now you're dead because you didn't run or whatever, you know, you weren't ready for that.
I have two directions that I would go. One is great big macro cultural.
Okay, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that.
And at the risk of repeating this for like the 6th or 8th time.
Okay.
The documentary Moguls and Movie Stars.
Yeah, and the sports guy. What was that one that you...
No, I'm not mentioning him now.
No? Okay.
You know, I have seen more documentaries than just 2 or 3 Ken Burns ones and been through more courses than that. But these ones keep being relevant to what we're talking about.
But what about the cultural thing?
The cultural thing is this. When you watch a documentary that is 7 one-hour videos on the history of Hollywood, not the history of film, the history of Hollywood, from the 1890s, when it was not Hollywood, it was New York, into the 1960s. It ends in the 1960s. You've got this stretch of how the movie industry happened. When you watch that 7 hours with space in between and time to discuss, you will be impressed how many times it ended. It's over. Sound comes to movies and people lose their careers because they looked good on camera and they had no voice. Mm-hmm. It's over. The Depression has happened. People don't go to movies. You've got to downsize. It's over. We're in a world war. You can't put money into movies. It's over. Television, the attack of the small screens is, I think, episode 5. The attack of the small screens is a big deal. TV is free. Movies are cost money. TV's in your home. It's convenient. And then eventually it was over. In the 1960s, the era of the moguls was over. The moguls were the ones who owned the studios, and the studios owned the actors and so on. Now, it didn't mean that movies are over.
Wait, but what happened then to
the moguls died out, and so now there's no MGM studios anymore. MGM still has a distribution. There's no RKO.
But there's other studios now.
There's other ones. Sony is on the MGM lot, and so on. But there was a major change where an era ended in the 1960s, and then a new era began. Now, I'm saying this not to give a crash course in American, U.S. film history. I'm saying it because watching it 8 or 9 times, mostly with students, there is such an encouragement to know that the long cultural arc of the change of an industry is filled with its overs, and then it's usually young people, not always, but it's usually young people who say, we can do this. We talked about this before because YouTube became the thing where young people like you're a major one, who said, there's an art instruction market here. And then you emerged as a person who was doing it from a bedroom in your parents' house. So I am still recommending that documentary because it can give you a long line of what happened before you were born to let you know that these are not unprecedented times, as Simon Sinek would say.
Sinek.
That's the big cultural macro.
Is that a TED Talk that he gave?
He gave it's a short, less than 15 minutes.
Oh, to his staff, right?
To his staff.
It's like a Skype call or something.
I love that. I love that Zoom call.
Yeah, that's great. It actually showed how good of a leader he is, right?
Yes.
The way he talks to people.
He was honest with his team members, and he was doing everything he could to encourage. But he was also putting on us where we have got to work together if we're going to make this through. And the claim is these are not unprecedented times. Mm-hmm. It's just that we're going to have to make some major reevaluation and change. So there's another one I recommend. Yeah. Is go to that. It's so short, but I've shown it in classes. It's good to show at the beginning of a semester because you see a group of people who are diverse, who are on the same team, and they're starting to catch a vision for, a lot of people are going to fall by the wayside, but we think we can do it.
I think humans are resilient. We adapt.
Like coyotes. We're coyotes.
We're better.
You think?
I think so.
Maybe we're more noble.
Who has more money? Who's sleeping in the bed?
Yeah, we could catch that Roadrunner.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
They talked about dying. They talked about They talked about movies. They talked about coyotes.
I mean, I don't think this conversation is going to be all like, yeah, and so there you go. This is what you do now, and you're going to be happy and butterflies and sprinkles. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be okay.
Glad you're feeling good.
I might be repeating stuff, but I think that humans just have a desire to just interact with other humans. There will definitely be a decrease in jobs in the art world, but I don't think it'll go away. The last episode, you were talking about collaboration. Like, do you really see yourself collaborating with a robot in the way you do with humans? Or we talked about how the long-term projects are very meaningful and how those are the ones that make probably the biggest impact. Not always.
But yes, they got the potential to make a great impact. You've got so many resources going into them. So much time.
Yeah. The long-term projects can be extraordinarily impactful to the world. They require a human experience in order to create them, desire them. I don't know. I just don't sense that robots will do that or completely replace it. It'll just be a tool. But I don't know.
Well, think about Jeffrey Katzenberg's claim, which some people will debate that claim. 90% of it will not be done. So what?
It might. Yeah.
Let's give it. You say it's 97%. What about the 3% that AI isn't doing? Who's doing what? We had Justin Sweet and Vance Kovacs for a whole afternoon at the community college because that's where they went. That's where I met them. And they showed each one of them showed hundreds of their work that they have, pieces of their work that they've done for game companies and movies and animated specials. And it was so impressive and it was so encouraging because this was just a couple of months ago where all these discouraged students, how are we ever going to have a career? And when Vance showed some of the stuff he did for a canceled movie, Mouse Guard, it's a couple of parent mice letting their kid mice go into a puppet show with an old mouse guy, and the kids are watching the old mouse guy doing the puppet show. And, Vance does these in a couple days or so. What AI does not know is how when parents release their kids into a new environment in public, they're a little sheepish about it. And that one kid might be energetic about it, and one is a little bashful, and that there's an old guy doing the puppet show, and that he's not good at much else, and he's an old guy, but he still does a good puppet show. Wasn't that a good puppet show? And the kids are relaxed, and one of them might be bored. AI does not know family dynamics from the inside. And storytelling illustrators like Justin and Vance do know that. Mm-hmm. And you look at the work that they did, and you thought, why would I hire AI to do this when I've got someone who, even if they were using AI, mm-hmm. they would still have enough emotional discernment to know how to tell a good story. So that was encouraging to say, here's what you do care about as a student who's going into the arts. You care about being a person. One of my old teachers, I've mentioned him before, Don Richardson, he had a 35-year career as a television director. He was a pretty difficult guy, but I remember him telling me and my friend, he said, I was always hired to come back because I always made things better. He always made the show funnier. He always made it more well-timed. He was always made it a better product. So there is a person who he said, I had a 35-year career in television and directors did not, because he started out with live TV in New York. And then he came out to Hollywood and was doing Westerns. He did Bonanza and that kind of thing. And then Westerns went out, and then science fiction came in, Star Trek and Lost in Space, and he was directing science fiction. And then he started doing police shows. And he said, the reason I could go from style to style is because I was properly trained. And he could take any genre and he could bring it up to a level because he was the one thing that was not expendable. So there was the appeal, is what are you bringing to this?
You're talking about, there's the 10% of the people who will stay. But I think it's more than that. I think that the people that are let go, like I said, will have a bigger opportunity to be able to compete with the companies. Because now there's a smaller moat. Companies will have a smaller moat because it's now easier to match their size. If they're scaling down, it's now, well, you could scale up much easier to their size and you can compete. And there's just going to be a bunch of little things. We might just have an economy of a lot of little things.
And we are right now, right?
Yeah, well, it's already going in that direction. Yeah. It might, like, a YouTuber doesn't need to produce anything nearly as big as a studio because they might need to only support themselves and like another person or two or something. Yeah. And it's like, that's enough. You just need to create enough value to make a living off of it. And I think it'll become a lot easier to do that on your own. And again, also it comes back to this idea of everybody needs to be a business. Maybe a little bit of a business.
Even a part of a business.
A part of a business or parts of a business need to be, you need to think of those things. And it doesn't hurt. You'll have an advantage.
That's where the micro thing comes in. You have the big macro thing of how industries change. But then there's micro things too. When sound came into movies, you had to have somebody who knew sound. You had somebody who'd have to have technical people. It used to be that the directors would run the camera. So then we got to specialize.
Are you saying that there's going to be people that like write prompts or something to control the AI?
No, I'm not.
I don't think anyone's excited about that.
No, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Is that if you can name what your skill is and then team up with someone who's got a complementary skill, it means you will be on a team where you do not have to be the entrepreneur. And this tends to happen when there is a healthy interaction of students who are supporting each other.
Okay.
Now ask me about what I'm doing in the next year.
What's up, Marshall? All right, Marshall. So what are you doing in the next year? In
the coming year, I am going to be teaching the Proco Perspective course.
I didn't know that when I asked.
Yeah, and I spent about 3 hours in the what do you call it? The community, the Proco community, where they put the first
Proco.com.
The first assignment
community.
Up. Yeah.
But you're in just the discussions of the lesson. Yeah.
The discussions of the lessons where they had an assignment.
Every lesson has a little discussion section. Yeah.
Okay. And the assignment was to present examples of prospective masters who you kind of adopt as art parents.
Okay.
And also any other specific problems. And one student presented the problem of how you do sidewalk paintings that only work from a certain point of view. When you stand there, they stretch out.
Okay.
And I've never done that, but I know enough about it.
Is that exciting?
Well, here's what's exciting about it.
They always look like gimmicks to me. I'm like,
it is a gimmick.
Cool.
It is a gimmick, but some people do it. And when social media was fairly new, those things went viral.
They did. And the first one, I was like, oh, wow, cool. And then the second one, I was like, oh, okay. This again.
But it's a legitimate question.
Quickly died as a cool idea.
It's a legitimate question because it's problem solving. You got to do a grid of squares. You got to find out what the squares would look like from that position. I don't know how to do it, but I do know.
Yeah, but it wasn't problem solving. They just took a photo or a drawing that they did. They took it into Photoshop and they skewed it. And then they gridded that skewed version. So then when they drew it, it would look correct in a different angle. They didn't do that in their head. They just used a tool.
Did you get that? Stan just explained how it's done. Now,
what? Wait, what? Why am I being mocked for that?
No,
you just said it's problem solving. It's not.
That is a problem that's solved with Photoshop.
Oh God, okay.
Before Photoshop, when they were doing that in centuries past, they had to figure out how to do it, and they had to figure out how to do it around concave domes as well. I have two things to say about that. That was presenting problems.
Am I killing?
No, you're not killing.
I'm yucking your yum?
No, it isn't, because I didn't answer the question. I said, if you're really interested in that.
No.
I'm saying this to the student. If you are asking it as I had a student that eventually the student stopped studying with me because I started to get so irritated that, could you have more than one protest? Could you make it so the camera is, and it's like, don't ask that. Unless I'd ask, are you working on something like that? No, I just want to know whether you could. It's too theoretical. You're playing a game with the teacher. But if you really are trying to solve a problem that you want to do some things when you paint on a wall that is a corner of the building, a corner of the room, and you walk into the room and you want it to look so that it looks like it's a flat surface. And then when you move around in the room, if you're really going to take on that project, then you will put the energy into solving it and you will share it with others, and others will say, have you seen the video where that person explains how they do it? And then the community starts energizing itself to solve these problems. I've had this happen a few times in the last few years with groups of students that one person's got a problem, another person's interested in it, and they work on it together by pooling resources. Everybody wins, including me, because I will be learning from the students.
How do we want to end the conversation about the doom and gloom and everyone's going to die?
The most positive thing I would say is that we can't control the big things. We can control the small things. We can control who we hang around with. You lose friends and all sorts of things can happen, but we have more control over who we hang out with. That is online and in person. And the best stuff that I have been personally experiencing since the pandemic has been small groups. They know who I'm talking about. 6 months with that one in end of 2022, still starting to connect back with some of the relationships. And these classrooms where students are coming down to Orange County from LA, 7 of them coming down to Orange County, and they drive together and they hang out with each other and they know each other's work and they're talking about their work and helping each other with their work. I
don't think that kind of stuff is going to go away. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't think it is either.
This is what I'm talking about. Little things that happen in the community, little micro economies.
Yeah.
Where there's a teacher who does little workshops and teaches art, and people who like it go take that. Some will travel, some will be really successful, which is how it is now. Like, some teachers make very little money and some make a shitload of money. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be like that. Maybe more like how it was before, pre-internet.
Explain.
Like, it was all more like local, real.
That's right. You hung out with people that you live close to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly think there's going to be a kind of pullback and a desire for more human interaction.
Yeah. High tech, high touch.
Go too deep into social media, AI, and people are just going to get fed up with it, and then there's going to pull back, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for real world stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but the example, do you know Slew?
Slew's the one who did the documentary on you.
He did do a documentary on me. It just came out, actually, if you haven't seen it.
I have.
He did a great job.
Yeah.
I really liked it. But he also did a little mini documentary, or like a video profile highlight of another artist. I forgot his name. But it's an artist that does portraits in New York, just on the street or in like a park or something. And before he even gets there, there's like 20 girls lined up because he's handsome. And they all want him to do their portrait. If he was a robot, would that wouldn't, right? They wouldn't be lined up.
Yeah.
And he makes a living off. He makes a very good living off of that.
And that's in New York?
I think so. I think he might have moved since then, but
okay.
But anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah. An artist at the park comes in, does portraits for several hours, makes 6 figures because he's handsome. Well, so he figured out the thing.
He figured out the thing he's got.
And he's a good artist, though.
Yeah.
Like,
so 2 things. I'm handsome and I'm a good artist.
Yeah.
So don't just work alone at home and not be seen.
Yeah. And I think I'm simplifying this entire story.
Well, everything we say.
Down to he's handsome. But
everything we say is from our point of view, which is a narrow point of view.
Slew made it a point in his document. This is why I'm repeating it.
Well, my work cut out for me for the next year, which is to work with many of you on getting good at perspective. And I'm excited about it. Mm-hmm. And I hope there is certainly evidence from those first posts that we have got potential for some very good community in this coming year plus. I came away from it energized and exhilarated. And this is not a Draftsmen podcast where it just goes out and it's impersonal. This is feedback and response to the people that are in there doing the work. Every one of those that I looked at, I thought, you spent your week on this. Mm-hmm. This is what you did. It's your job. So it's exciting to see that.
My positive thing is that my prediction, I think that if you get really good at what you do, there will be a place for you. That if you provide value to the world, people will want what you're doing. And it might not be in the way that you imagined. It might not be you working for Sony or Disney or whatever, but it might be in a different way. in whatever new world, because there's always a new world. It's always shifting. So just focus on getting good. Go towards that direction of what you want to do, and I think you'll be fine.
Well, here's to your long success.
My success.
Yours.
I thought you meant my prediction.
Yeah.
Yes, my success. I was like, yeah.
I was trying to find a way to make it so micro that it came down to what we're doing here. So are we done?
Oh, I have another one, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this little venison sticks protein, if you need more protein.
So it's like from a dead deer?
Yeah, this is a dead animal. I'm sorry. But
is that what you just ate?
Yes.
How you feeling?
I feel great. I protein. So here, it's from Maui, and it says, this delicious snack is made with 100% wild harvested venison sourced from Maui's invasive axis deer population as a means to balance their impact to their ecosystem, to our ecosystem, food systems, and communities. Yeah, basically these deer are assholes who are invading.
Yeah.
No, it's delicious. I eat it because it tastes good.
Sure.
Okay, this was recommended to me by Tim Ferriss. That's another thing. I didn't. Didn't I tell you?
You didn't tell me about going and spending a week with Tim Ferriss.
I know. I read his books.
I know you did.
And I followed him for a while, listened to his podcast, and then he suddenly wants to learn how to draw. So I saw that he started following me on Instagram, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then he messaged me. He actually reached out. I was like, yeah, you want me to give you some lessons and stuff? And we met up.
You flew to wherever he is.
Yeah. And it was for like 5 days. I was so amazed because the dude is busy, right? He's got lots of stuff going on. He gave me 100% attention for 5 days. Totally not expecting this. I thought I would have like dedicated slots in his day. He is able to just push everything aside and focus because he decided that he wants to learn.
So he arranged for that.
Yeah. I got there and we were staying in the same house and we were together from breakfast till pajamas. Not pajamas, but till we're like, all right, good night. And I was like, Jesus, he didn't do anything except learn to draw for me today for 5 days. That was inspiring, honestly.
That is inspiring. You've had a quality like that to some degree too. I remember coming down to when you were at your parents' house and we spent a whole day together, and I was thinking, how can you do this when you're running a business? And you seemed like you were completely involved in a conversation that went on for hours and hours through the day. We spent a whole afternoon. That did impress me.
But I didn't do that for 5 days straight.
No, you didn't do it for 5 days straight. And also, you can be hard to get a hold of, but when we do talk, you seem like you're 100% involved. Yeah,
focus.
That's a good quality.
But anyway, he had these sticks there that we would just snack on.
So that was it.
And he's like, yeah, these are super healthy. They're minimally processed. There's no preservatives as far as I know, whatever. But anyway, he recommended these. He says they're healthy, and he's a health freak. Mm-hmm. So that's why I like these.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, they actually taste delicious.
They've got a seal of approval from Santa Claus on them too.
And then I don't know. I've been eating these.
What are those?
I don't know anything about this.
Is that the?
These are peanut butter refrigerated snacks. They're showing up everywhere now. This is not anything new.
Yeah.
The sugar in there is honey.
The sugar in there is honey?
It's honey. Yeah, it's honey.
Well, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if you're a diabetic, this is not your thing.
Oh, right.
But I don't eat that much sugar. I don't drink soda. I don't eat candy. This is fine for me.
How boring.
Yeah. Jesus. You don't either.
I know.
Do you eat
I'm glad to be boring.
Sugary cereals or anything like that?
No, I don't. But I eat lots and lots of chocolate. Too much chocolate.
Yeah, but it's dark chocolate.
It's typically dark chocolate and semi-sweet.
That's different. I eat dark chocolate.
It's too much, yeah.
Too much? Will you eat a whole bar?
Well, I eat it all throughout the day, and if
a whole bar in a day,
I'm hesitant to know because I don't measure it. Because when I have measured it, I've had to cut back. But yeah, that and 2 or 3 times a week, coffee are about the only junk food. And so
how is coffee junk food?
Well, coffee's a drug. I mean, we don't want to talk about this again. Come on.
It's a drug if you do too much of it. Everything's a drug.
I think this episode is over.
Yeah. This episode was over half an hour ago. Okay.
I just don't want to stop talking to you, Marshall.
See ya.
Bye, guys.